wine rooms for a day, and I was at that time probably like 8 or 9. Walked into a cellar, and it must have been just before after harvest. You can get a typical cellar smell. I'll never forget that. And I looked at this and never knew of it as a career choice. Even more so when I went back to school up in Joburg, and they didn't even know what it was. They thought winemakers were just like mechanics that work in the background. And yeah, I started in high school and was already reading the wine magazine. I remember the first one that came out was Peter Ferreira on the front cover. And yeah, my mom has always been very free to let us follow our own paths. And what happened is the platter was still very thin in 95, and there wasn't emails yet. So we set up a letter and sent out faxes to potential farms that I just sort of earmarked in the platter, and came up to Kaapstad, the Statler family. And I was obviously just out of matric, 19, and they took me on more. It was actually Ingvild, Donny's wife, that sort of pushed me more as help for Donny. Donny Sr. had never had anyone before, and I then took a job there more as eyes for people stealing wine out the cellar. But it was then I actually ended up staying 3 years with them and became part of the family. And really, I'm very close to Donny Jr. We sort of brothers from another mother type thing, because he was in standard 7 or 8 when I met him. And when he realized that as a winemaking family, he took it for granted almost that you're born in this industry. But then he saw the passion that I had for not having that, call it generational right to take over a farm. And it really drove to him that he understood that he had a great opportunity within his family to start, and that's where he is, and he's doing a great job running the family business there now. Spent 3 years with them, and then worked for a mobile bottling company. Was very interesting. Got to meet a lot of different farms that you would not have necessarily have known from. That's how I met David from Glencairn. They didn't have a bottling line at that time, and he sort of offered me a job after seeing how I worked on the line and that. And I was a little wary. I said no the first time, and then did a bottling again with him, and he sort of pressed again, and it's like, oh, and I said, okay, well, let's go for it. So then I actually, before starting at Glencairn, which was middle of 99, I then went to America to Hess Collection, which was part of the Glencairn group in those early years, and did a harvest there. And started at Glencairn in 2000, and then did vintages in Australia, France, Germany, and Austria over the couple of years. And then Glencairn started getting quite large, and David Finnison, the whole farm was sold in the the mid 2000s, and then David left in 2009. And I took over as head winemaker and continued there until 2016. The reason I left Glencairn was I'd been there 17 years. It was like almost part of the furniture. And I decided if I don't do it now, I'll regret it. So I decided to start my own company, which was when I started Lahman Wines. First vintage was 2017. So I finished at Glencairn at end of 2016, and Lahman Wines is still, it's only year 3 now. But that's where I am. So I buy wines from different regions. I'd only worked with Paarl grapes for so many years that it was now time to say, well, let's try and do Chardonnay from a cooler climate. There's a couple of independent that are multi-regional, which is also interesting, and it gives you a bit of diversification of working with a specific variety in a different area.
Wow, this is interesting. So I just want to know, Arco, if you knew from a young age that you're going to be in the wine industry. At what age did you start drinking wine?
It's funny. My parents were not big wine drinkers. My heritage is Dutch, Arco. It's obviously the unusual name. It's sort of a mix from Onco and Arno. Then Laman, there's not many Lamans in the country, but the interest I had actually sort of made interest in my parents, so that they moved to Cosmos in Hartbeespoort Dam. They've got a beautiful guest house there. They actually literally put a cellar into the mountain for the guests, but for myself to play a bit. And yeah, I didn't actually drink a lot of wines until I started at Kaapstad. I would more manage their sort of cellar. So I would just see certain wines ahead, and then let's keep that, and let's see if that's going to stay. And my dad also into the Chateau Libertas box competition. Not box, I mean like a wooden box, not bag in the box, but it was a wine magazine competition. I had to use my dad's details because it was still underage. And then he got this letter that we were one of the 50 guys to win this box. And it's actually a beautiful Chateau Libertas vintage, when it still had those gold Superior stickers from 1982, 3, 4, 5, 6 vintages of 6 bottles. My dad almost threw it away because he thought it was a promotion, but then he actually saw that we won this thing. And it was me as a minor that's now trying to win competitions out of the wine magazine.
Well, that's fantastic. So tell us a bit, how you started Laman Wines, the wines you are making, and also, your winemaking philosophy.
Look, a lot of it comes from my philosophy in wine is also more driven towards the varieties that I work with. To be fair, my company is only 3 years old now. There are certain wines and projects still up and coming, but obviously having spent 17 years at Glencairn, Chardonnay became part of my blood. It's obviously one of the strongest products for Glencairn. And so Chardonnay is for me very important in my business. And I started, like I said, in the beginning of 2017. I had my sort of entry level, I've got 2 ranges. So I've got my entry level or mid range called Cluster Series, which was a Chardonnay from Pekingese Kloof. Well, the first year was actually from Elgin, and then the 17 is from Pekingese Kloof. And a Cab, which the initial vintage was Paarl, and now it's Stellenbosch. And then my second range is the Focal Point wines. And those are very more site specific as well, with a Chardonnay from a region called Vermaaklikheid. I'm sure you've heard of it. They're near Riversdale on the Davenhooks River. And then a Cinsault, which I did in 2017, which was Stellenbosch. In 2018 is Achterperl, beautiful bushvine stuff. And then an old wine Shannon from a block in Paarl, as old as me. I was born in 1977, so it's a 43-year-old vineyard. And my philosophy is, look, keep things simple. It's interesting. I always dealt with, you get all the smoker coming to sell you additives and barrels and staves and this and that. And I believe that wine is a natural product. If you have good grapes, you can bring all the flavors you need direct from the vineyard by not having to add anything that you would maybe see in a cooperative situation. I do use cultivated yeast with my Chardonnay because Chardonnay is a neutral variety. So I do experiment with different yeast strains. But otherwise, a lot of my stuff is also natural fermentation. But people must forget, people talk about natural wines, yeast is natural. So whether it's cultivated by Anchor, as long as it's not a GMO, it is the same thing as a natural yeast, but it's just been gone through a process where it is more active than natural ones. But there's definitely differences in that, and I'd like to get diversity in my Chardonnay to get different flavor components out of it from the yeast and from the barrels.
Very interesting. You mentioned that you're looking at wines from different areas and specifically wines that are, grapes that come from a specific place. Can you explain to us what Cape Sites is and how that works?
It's called Cape Site Specific. It's a group that we started, me and probably about eight producers at the time. was more about sharing a standard Cape wine. But as we know, wine is sold by stories and philosophies and that. And what we put together is a group that believe in wines with a sense of place. So to be part of this group, your wines have to qualify for their origins. So you can't have wines from Western Cape or blended between Paarl and Stellenbosch. The minimum criteria is that it must be at least wine of origin Stellenbosch, but the best thing is to go from there to Ward to as close as you can to single vineyard. So I have a wine that comes from a single vineyard, not it's not been certified yet for the 2020 vintage. It's a single vineyard, which is that old vine Shannon and I was talking about. So the more specific you get and the more driven to the site is the story. So we're now on our 4th year together. Very different under the circumstances with COVID. We're all working from home and talking to each other. It's funny, the winemakers are always very social people, and I actually went out yesterday to go and do something, but we don't see each other as much as we did in the past. But yeah, we're all like-minded and like to have wines with a sense of place. That's the most important message that we're trying to push through into the market.
So Cape Sites, is that official? Is that an organization with a brand? You know, is it branded, certified? Is it a non-profit? How does it work?
It's called Cape Site Specific, and it's set up as a company, as an organization, and we all of us pay a fee to be part of it. And if we want to do an event, then it's like pay as you go, in whether you want to do it or not. And look, the idea for us is actually sort of to have a good pool of money from all of us together, and then to invite people from overseas, and sort of work together with Woza to create content. Like the Swartland has done really, really well. Like, you need to create content in the industry to be able to tell your stories and that. So that's how it's been driven. It's not about making money. It's just about making it operate under our membership fees and what we're willing to take part in as a member.
So are the wines labeled in some way so that you can see it? How does the consumer know this comes, or is it how does that work at the moment?
We haven't gotten to that stage yet where we have a seal or something. It's not like the Old Vines group yet. But you bring up a good point. We don't have anything specifically on our labels yet that mention that. It's more about the events that we do together. But yeah, that is something we should look at maybe, is to add something onto the bottle that can at least bring you to the website to understand our philosophies, and that's similar to the wine seal, the certification seal. Not everybody, we in the industry know what it stands for, but even the well-known wine drinker with knowledge doesn't fully understand what even the seals that we have on the labels actually represent. But that's all about getting the message out there, and that's yeah.
It's like you say, it's creating content and raising awareness. It's like anything, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, okay, your wines, where are you selling? Are you selling in the local market only? Are you exporting? How do you work?
I think we all know that the South African market is pretty flooded. I think if you think now, I think the latest number I heard was 6,000 different wines available under different brands and that type of thing. So my focus was really to drive the international market side. So my wines are local and international, but I'm really pushing on the export side. I export to Belgium, Mauritius, UK, trying to get into Holland, America I'm still working on. But yeah, export is important, but then local as well. But obviously being a small independent producer, I'm not going to be selling at the macros and doing pellet deals and that type of thing. So it's more your independent. So the well-known guys like Wine Menu, up in Joburg, all the wine concept stores down here, 1 or 2 liquor cities, the well-known one in Claremont, Liquor City. He's got best range of wines, largest range of wines and gins and all sorts of things. So he's always keen to take on new wines. And then obviously direct consumers, where we and any winery makes the best margins is with, if you have a cellar door or do events that you drive your direct sales, which is something I'm very much focusing on, which I think we all are now in this COVID thing, is that online wine sales have increased dramatically, and online wine shops, just trying to push those sales that you're not getting in the restaurants anymore, or the reduction of availability in the liquor stores, and only having a 5-day, no, 4 days. You can only buy alcohol 4 days of the week. So yeah, it's, I don't know, for the bigger guys to work out budgets in that this year. I'm glad I know I've got only a certain amount of wine to sell, but for the big boys, it's a bit scary.
Yeah, then you don't want to sit with a cellar full of wine when you get your next harvesting, right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
I think what's interesting to me is that you mentioned direct to consumer, which you're right. It's growing a lot, but also you said events. So do you do pop-up tastings?
Yeah, I actually had just started that just before the lockdown. I did my first one at the winery where I buy the Chenin from. Then my idea was to do it at certain, either to use a restaurant or certain of the guys, like the Sommelier Association in Stellenbosch, or a wine bar somewhere that uses my wines and that. So that was the idea, is once a month to do like a pop-up tasting, but that's all gone at the moment. So we don't know when we can all have a glass of wine together with a meal, or get together to do a tasting. So yeah, that is the way. I haven't been doing a lot of online Zoom meeting tastings, that type of thing. It's very difficult to do that as well. You can't drop everybody a bottle of wine. We're at Cape Side specifically trying to figure out, well, let's take a 750ml bottle and put it into 50ml little bottles and send it out, and you do a group tasting with someone. But it's logistics and timings and all of that. And to be fair, I think people being a bit overrun with some of these things maybe. So, but yeah, it's important to get to the direct consumer.
So besides that, I see on your website you also offer a winemaking consultancy service. I was wondering about that, and also, what other services do you offer?
Yeah, there's look, because I work for myself. I'm not as hectic as when I was working at Glencairn. When I left there, I think we were bottling 650,000 bottles, which keeps one very, very busy. With myself, I utilize cellar space near me here in Paarl, so that keeps me busy maybe 2-3 days of the week. Obviously, wintertime is more quiet time for winemakers. You've got everything to barrel and everything self-filled up and everything safe. So I offer, any consultancy for small guys that don't have the budget for, say, only producing 5 or 10 tons for a small guest house winery or whatever. So I can do little parcels for them if they have their own vineyards. And then obviously anything from packaging for other people that are looking for a winemaker that can do everything from finding bulk wines, doing bottling for them, and so on. It hasn't been such an active part of my business, but there's sort of 2-3 people that I have as a concern that I do this for now, which is great. It sort of just puts a little bit more into the bank account without having to sell wine.
Interesting. So you've mentioned the coronavirus and the lockdown a bit, and it's forced all of us to actually rethink our business models. So do you have any changes or new ideas that came to mind while you were sitting there in lockdown?
Yeah, look, there's again, I'm really pushing on the export side. There's 1 or 2 new opportunities coming my way, which will really, really help, because obviously we for 2 months couldn't sell anything here locally, but like in the UK, there's online companies that have been selling throughout the lockdown, and it's been like Christmas for them for the last 3-4 months. So people are not going out, but people are ordering wine, and we weren't able to do that. So there is definitely a demand and a bit of a gap. Unfortunately, some people did lose the business due to those 2 months where they had potential listings with some of the larger Systembolaget in Sweden and whatever. But yeah, just really looking at again, like I said earlier, that is my model, is exporting and just making that grow strength from strength in this environment at the moment.
So interesting to me is, it's European summer now, well, the whole Northern Hemisphere. And this is obviously a high consumption time. So what about logistics? If you get orders now, are you managing to get them out?
Yeah, there's in general, there is a bit of a bottleneck at the harbour. But since the export allowance was lifted, that we can export again, I actually I sent some wine to Belgium, and yeah, it took the usual 3-week turnaround. It wasn't too bad. Obviously, if you want to still get into that rosé season for the UK, you want the stuff on the water now before their season stops. So I don't know. I don't do rosé yet. I'm looking at doing it possibly next year. But yeah, our timings have been out because specifically those 2 months where we were not allowed to export. Definitely certain products, not only wine, but if you think of some of the beers and sort of ciders and things like that, they've lost a huge chunk of business because you've now something that should have been there 2 months ago is 2 months behind. So it's not easy.
Yeah, by the time it gets there, it's winter.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that is the issue. So okay,
yeah.
you've had an interesting journey in the wine industry. What is the most important thing that you've learned so far from your wine journey?
Look, the thing is that there's a lot of competition. That's I did know that before I started my own business. Winemakers can make wine, and we all can make wine, or estates can make wine, but it's another thing to sell it. It's a big part of our industry is marketing and being out there. So that's really been, it's not I'd say life lesson in the wine industry. It's definitely, I've known it as a learning curve that you're going to be marketing all the time. But I won't regret having gotten into the industry over 20, when are we on? My first vintage I did was in 96. So yeah, it's a long time. I've been in PAL for 20 years. And my wife has now actually decided to move to a cooler area. And I think it's also more maybe part of my Chardonnay campus going on. We're going to be moving to Onrus, and I'll look at some area there to higher space and really look at cooler climate Chardonnay from Elgin or the Cape South Coast, getting a bit closer to for Marklegate, so I don't have to drive as far to get the grapes. And yeah, we'll hire over there for a year and see if it works. Our daughter is not old enough to get into school. Actually, she's still young enough before she needs to start anything. And yeah, I've got good friends there. Hannes Storm, obviously the Finnersons from Creation, I know well. So if they can do it, I'm sure it's possible. So that's hopefully the next 20 years in my wine journey.
Well,
at that.
I just wanted to ask you that because, you're still young and your business is even younger. So what is your long-term vision? Where are you going to take Larman Wines? What is your plan? Obviously to make it as profitable as possible. What I've actually done with my packaging is
if you look at the labels, it's very much driven on the names. So you got Focal Point Chardonnay, and the story is specific variety from a specific region, and then the cluster series, which means cluster obviously means a bunch of grapes. So I need one berry can be perfect, but you need a whole cluster to fill a glass of wine, and even more so to fill a bottle. So I use my name to endorse my wines, but I think what my plan is in the next 20 years is that if I can push these wines, get the brands strong enough out there that they can actually be freestanding brands on their own, that I don't sell my name, but I can sell those brands to someone who's interested in increasing the size of it. Or I'd have to see if my daughter wants to get into wine, but she's only 3, so I'm not going to push her on whether she's going to be in my footsteps. But
it sounds like in your family, I have to start drinking at 7, right, to be a winemaker. To be a winemaker at 16.
No. So we'll see. But hopefully. Yeah, obviously we all want to put food on our plates and have a comfortable life. And the wine industry can do that if you just keep your nose to the grindstone, create quality wines that people enjoy, and look at old vines as becoming quite a strong marketing part of South Africa, and maybe get more involved in that, looking at different regions. If you look at Chris Arlight, he lives in that area that I'm talking about, Onrus, but he's buying grapes from all the way up in Pekingese Kloof and all over. So he's also a bit more multi-regional. So that's the different side of being sort of the old 1980s landgoed or estate wines. But yeah, we'll see what happens in 20 years. We can have this conversation in 5 or 10 years from now again. It doesn't have to be that long. But hopefully I'm staying on a stronger foot, or we all are.
Yes, I really hope so. Can you give us your very own wine quote?
Yeah,
your favorite one?
I was struggling a little bit with that. My wife, I do tend to have a good sense of humor sometimes when get put in the spots, but obviously Chardonnay is a very big part of me, and there was that time when I was traveling in the US, or actually it's the US is part of the problem, is that they were making these heavy Chardonnays, over wooded, over full malolactic fermentation, too much buttonage. They made these wines that were so planky and dry that you need like 3 glasses of water with a glass of wine. And there was a stage that I'm sure you know of called ABC, anything but Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to see, which I did in the years of Glencairn, is reduce the wood. It needs to be part of it, but create wines with a bit more finesse, even more so now working with this Vermarklikheid stuff, where it's on strong limestone soils, 8 kilometers as a crow flies to the sea. Making Chardonnays with finesse and changing the ABC, anything but Chardonnay, to always buy Chardonnay.
There we go. I like that.
So that's what I'm going for.
That's your quote. Always buy Chardonnay. I love it. So, thank you very much for spending the time here. Our listeners are sitting here and they want to get hold of you, want to order your wines. How do they do that?
There's a couple of options now, and obviously directly from me, it's www.larmanwines.com is the website, and then all the outlets I mentioned earlier, and then also recently just started with Shopstar. That's also the online way to get it, and I do tend to do my own delivery still at the moment. So if you do buy, you might actually still get to meet the winemaker dropping the wine themselves. So, but yeah, maybe direct is probably best. So look at larmanwines.com and click on to the order sheet, and me or my wife will email within a day usually, and then get the wines out. Depending on this lockdown, because you're not allowed to move it around after Thursday, but usually if one orders on a Monday, Tuesday, you'll still get it before you can't have it on Thursday after evening at 5 o'clock or whatever.
I think what you're talking about now is obviously within striking distance of Paul. What happens if people order from the outskirts of the country or even in Gauteng? How do you manage that?
Well, look, Gauteng is courier service, and that's, I would say, with the lockdown rules, maybe a week. Otherwise, recommend them going to the likes of Wine Menu, and one or two guys are there. But the best is Dry Dock Liquors as well. They also have my wines. You can still do a week's turnaround. Once you start moving out the country, maybe more like 2 weeks and that type of thing.
Okay, awesome. Arco, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. We'll put all the links down in the description. And yes, I'm sure people will find this interesting. Good luck with everything you're doing. And with your move to Honors. And